Hello. It's good to see you. Today I'm going to tell you a story, and it's not hypothetical. This is actually I'm giving you gossip on my own life, my own past. Now, if you're new here, thank you so much for stopping by. I've had a lot of new subscribers in the last few days. Welcome. It's so great to have you. I understand that you came here from TikTok, which I don't do TikTok, and I don't know who recommended my channel, but I really appreciate it. Whoever it was, thank you. If you would let me know in the comments, I'm just curious because I don't know who it was, but I really appreciate it. Again, I don't do TikTok or any of that stuff, but it's great to have you. Thank you for being here. Now, if you haven't seen a lot of my videos, my channel is like the Vegas super bar of channels. I do a lot of different things. And personally, I don't watch ASMR videos and I don't keep up with what other ASMR people are doing. I'm kind of like the Lone Ranger out here. I kind of do my own thing and I don't. When I used to watch ASMR videos before I started making them myself, but I found that after I started making them, they didn't really work for me anymore, and it actually made me feel kind of uncomfortable to watch them for some reason. It made me feel weird. So I haven't watched any ASMR videos now in almost 9 years. So I really don't know what anybody else is doing. I do whatever I want to do. The theme on this channel is I do what I want. So whatever video you see, that's the video I felt like doing that day. I don't have a schedule. I have no sponsors. I don't do any sponsored anything. I do what I want to do every single day. And I also have a full-time job and I do have kids. I'm a single mom, so I'm really busy. But I do when I have something I want to do, I do it when I have time to do it. So again, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here. If you like it, tell other people about it. There's a little bit of everything here. There really is. And today I'm going to tell you about my first marriage. I have no secrets. I've been married 3 times, and I am still in a relationship with my third ex-husband. Basically, we were a blended family that didn't blend. When we got married, between the two of us, we had 5 boys under the age of 12. We were all 7 of us living in the same house, and it was a big house, but it didn't work out too well. So anyway, we were married for about 3 years, and then we separated. But we're still, we live separately, but we're still like in a relationship. We're just not married anymore. So, but I'm going to tell you about my first husband. We're going to be talking about him today. And I wanted to do this partly because I want you to know, if you're going through something right now that's really tough and you feel like you're never going to get through it, I'm going to tell you 2 things about it. Number 1, you will get through it. This will not last forever. Things always change. And like the saying says, it can't rain every day. It can't rain every day. Just remember that. It's not always going to be this way. You will survive it. And I also want to tell you, there's a chance that years down the road, what you're going through right now will be something that you look back on and you laugh about it. It will. I know it sounds crazy because when I was going through this with my ex-husband, my first ex, I would have never thought this would be funny. But looking back on it, it kind of is funny. It's funny now because it's over. It's in the past. It's not something that will ever affect my life again. So I divorced him, and it was a good decision to do that. And I'll explain why. Okay. So this was back when I was obviously younger than I am now. Oh, first, before we start that, I was looking through a bunch of my old pictures today. I was trying to find some pictures from my first wedding, and I had a hard time finding them. I had to go through a bunch of pictures. I had this big box full of pictures and some albums, and it took a while to go through them all to find. They were like at the very bottom of the box. And while I was going through them, I found some pictures I totally forgot about. One of them, and I'm going to be showing you pictures over here. Right here. So this picture here that I'm showing you, this is a picture of my dad and 4 of his brothers and sisters, I think. There were 6 of them in total. And he's the one on the far left over there, the sad looking little boy. That's my dad. I found that picture. I just thought I would show you that. And I found some pictures of one of my dad's brothers. Now, this was back in the late 90s. I had longer hair and it was darker. I had dyed it. And so this is me when I was significantly younger. This was before I got married. This was before I even met the guy I married. But I kind of think in profile, I look a bit like my dad's brother, and that's because he takes more after their mom's side of the family, and I look a lot like my grandmother, my dad's mom. I look a lot like her, and he favors her more too. But I don't know. I just kind of thought that I kind of favored him a little bit. I never really noticed it until I was looking through those pictures. So I thought I would show you. That's me when I was much younger. That picture is it's at least 30 years old. Yeah, that was at least 3 decades ago. That has nothing to do with anything. I just thought I would show you that. But basically that's kind of what I looked like when I was going through this. And I'm going to show you some pictures because I did find some pictures. I don't have any pictures of him. Actually, he might be in the background of one of them. It doesn't matter what he looks like. Just imagine the most obnoxious, devious person. Okay? Have you ever been in a relationship with someone and you look back on it like, was I on drugs the entire time that I was in that relationship? Was I really? What was I thinking? What was I thinking? Please tell me I'm not the only one. Let me know in the comments if you've done that. You look back at a relationship like, what on earth was I smoking the entire time I was with that person? Because I look back and I don't know. I have to tell you how we met. All right, so this was back in 1999, early 99. My brother was getting married. Now, if you are new here, one of the things I have talked about is the fact that I was in a cult when I was younger, a religious cult. I call it a cult. Of course, the organization doesn't call it a cult. They don't appreciate being called a cult. It was a cult. I don't talk about it a whole lot because it's not like fond memories for me, but I did write a fiction novel based loosely on my experiences in the church and other people's experiences as well. I interviewed some of the former members after I left, and I incorporated a lot of their experiences, both in the group and after they left the group, into the book. It's called River Road, and you can get it on Kindle. You can get hard copies on Amazon. Anyway, so my brother and his wife had been in the church for about over 10 years. They had been in the church, and so they wanted me to be one of their bridesmaids, and I said I'd love to. Now, this was up in Illinois. Now, I live in North Carolina. So my mother and I flew up there for the wedding and for me to be one of the bridesmaids. And it was a beautiful wedding. It was very beautiful. It was really nice. And one of the groomsmen, or whatever you call them, groomsmen. I had never been in a wedding before. I don't know. It's groomsmen. That's right. And then there's like a best man and a maid or a matron of honor. That's right. You would think being married 3 times I would know this. I didn't have like a bridal party except at my first wedding. So I was one of the bridesmaids, and there was a whole. I went through like a Poseidon adventure to get my dress made. That was a totally different thing. I had to have the dress made down here, and the person who made the dress made it like 4 sizes too small. It was literally, the waist was like literally this big, and I'm like, it was a miracle that she let it out as much as possible, and oh my god. Anyway, so the groomsman that they paired me with was this guy I didn't know, and he struck me as funny and interesting to talk to. He was a good conversationalist, and we just seemed to kind of hit it off. And we all sat at the bridal party table, at the reception, and it was great. And we kept in touch after that. Now, he was also in the church. Of course, everyone in the bridal party was a member of the church except for me. I was the lone, like, heathen slash infidel person. I mean, not that it came up, but, everybody knew I was not a member of the church. But nobody made a big deal out of it or anything. They just knew I was the groom's sister from down south. Everybody wanted to hear me talk. And so we stayed in touch after that. I came back here. I was living here in North Carolina at that time. I was working as a social worker in Child Protective Services. I was an investigator. And so we stayed in touch by email and by phone. And we really seemed to be hitting it off. And this went on, let's see, this went on for about 6 months. And he proposed over the phone, and I said yes. And I was very excited about, the plan was I would move up to Illinois and I would join the church. I had already been through the baptism. They have a very specific kind of ritual baptism that they do. It's very it's you have to do it their way. And then I had never been baptized anyway, so you had to do it in the church the way they do it. It's very specific. So they had a church in Virginia that I went to do that. I went through, there's a whole course that you go through. They send you this whole binder of stuff and you have to go through. It's called the Welcome Book. I still have it somewhere. I have it up in the attic. I never actually finished it though. I got like halfway through it and didn't ever finish it, but hardly anybody ever finishes it. I found that out later, like, don't feel bad, like nobody finishes that thing. So I went in and I did the baptism at the church in Virginia, and I think my brother was actually there for that, even though, at that point, let me think. He and my sister-in-law were both in the Navy, and they were both part of the church. I think at that point, let me think. At that point, I think he was living in Virginia, and I think originally she was living in Illinois, and she ended up moving down there with him. I think that's how ultimately they ended up living in Virginia. So he was there at the church for the baptism, and it was a very emotional thing. It was, for me, it was very emotional, and so after that, I was allowed to date because my first husband was a single brother in the church, and so they're very picky about what the single brothers are allowed to do, and I do talk about the single brothers in the story I wrote. They're kind of shrouded in mystery. There's a lot you don't really know about them, and you're not allowed to know it. Even if you're dating one of them, even if you're engaged to one of them, there's a lot you're not allowed to know. I was not allowed to know where he lived. I was not allowed to be alone with him. We were not supposed to go anywhere without a chaperone. We were not supposed to spend time alone together. I was encouraged to, once I moved to Illinois, I got an apartment there, and they found an apartment for me, and it was approved by the church because one of the elders, one of the sisters who had been in church for a long time, lived right below me. She lived one floor down from me. I found out later, I didn't know at the time, she was given a key to my apartment and would go in and check just to make sure I was doing everything appropriately. And it's in the book too that she found a John Denver CD in my apartment, which is not allowed. And I was scolded for it, and it was horrible. It was horrible. And I'm not saying that's something I laugh about now, but that was part of my experience living there. I'm not trying to bring you down. We're here to talk about my first husband, not all that. But I'm just trying to let you know, just give you some kind of, a little bit of the background of what it was like moving up there, leaving everything behind that I had here, leaving my job. Oh, and I wasn't allowed to talk about what I did. Being a Child Protective Services investigator, I was told to, we're not telling you to lie about it, but maybe just be kind of generic. Just say, oh, I was a social worker. Just leave it at that. We're not asking you to lie. Because, see, the bishop and founding pastor of this church was in prison for inappropriate activity with a minor or two or three, and he was in prison for that. So they had a really bad opinion of CPS investigators because they were involved in all that. So it's like, don't tell anybody that's what you did. We really don't care for those people here. Which was kind of a red flag. Like, why am I not allowed to talk about? Why do I have to edit what I say? I mean, but I went along with it because a big part of what I wanted to get along. I wanted people to like me. So I got to give this guy a name. What should I call him? I'll call him Donnie. That's not his name. So Donnie and I would be allowed to get married because the church kind of has to approve it. With him being a single brother, the single brothers were called eunuchs. They were not literal eunuchs. When I first heard that, I said, oh my God. He said, no, spiritual eunuch. It's not literal. Spiritual eunuchs. We have dedicated our lives to the church, and most of us will never get married. But he said, I do want to get married. I don't want to stay this way. Okay. So we'll call him Danny. How about that? So Danny, I know I said Donnie. I like Danny better. That's not his name. So Danny was happy to have me up there, but it was kind of weird because I lived up there. I was not allowed to see him when I got there. Oh, and to move from North Carolina to Illinois, the church said the appropriate way for a single lady to do that. I said, I can get up there. It's no big deal. I had a Volkswagen bus at that point and a little Sentra, a little Nissan Sentra, little compact car. I said, I can get up there. It's no big deal. No, it does. It's not right. We can't have a single lady doing that. I'm good, No. So they had two of the single ladies fly down to Greensboro, where I live, and I went to the airport to pick them up. And they were dressed to the nines. I mean, like heels, hose, dresses, had their hair all done. Like, yikes. I was told, and this is what they said, the sisters are going to come help you pack and move. And I'm thinking, they're not dressed to pack and move anything. Why are they dressed that way? So what we did was, okay, they stayed. So I already had everything packed. I had like a big, a U-Haul truck with my stuff in it. And I had a tow dolly for my Volkswagen bus. And what we did was one of them ended up driving my car. And I drove the U-Haul. It was one of the big trucks, because I had a lot of stuff, all my furniture and everything. So they came down dressed. I was embarrassed because I was just in like a t-shirt and jeans, and they're all like, whew, I felt underdressed. And they looked at me weird when they met me, like, oh, sister, because they don't really encourage women to wear pants, certainly not shorts. You were not allowed to wear shorts, tank tops, two-piece bathing suits. Like, they didn't even want you wearing one piece by itself. You were supposed to wear like a long t-shirt over it. They were very picky about the way you would dress, whether you were at church or not. And if they spotted you out somewhere, like if they saw me in the grocery store with a tank top on, I would get called into the pastor's office. You would get a talking to. I got a talking to a few times because I was too independent. I was too worldly. Anyway, so all this is going on. And it's a totally different world from what I had known because I've been on my own since I was 17. I graduated high school at 17, went off to college. I had been on my own ever since. My parents didn't pay for me to go to college. I was on my own. And I knew I was either going to sink or swim, and it was up to me to decide my fate. So I was very independent by that point. So, man, wow. So I moved. We got everything up there. We had to stop overnight because it's a pretty long drive. It was like 15 hours. We stopped overnight in West Virginia. It was beautiful driving through West Virginia. I have to say, I remember how beautiful it was up there. It was gorgeous. We did stop overnight and stayed in a motel overnight, and then got up the next morning and went the rest of the way. Um, so I got up there and I was really excited to see Danny. Like, oh my goodness! Of course, he was not allowed to come because that would not be appropriate, even with chaperones. Like, no, that's because y'all are gonna have to stay overnight, and that would just not look right. So keep in mind, I hadn't seen him in person since my brother's wedding months prior. So I was really excited to see him when I got there. Oh, no, no. Oh, no, you can't see him. No, that wouldn't be appropriate. We will schedule a time for you to see him with a chaperone, of course. We will let you know. And I had been there, I want to say, at least a week before I was allowed to see him. I didn't know where he lived. I was not allowed to know where he lived. I never found out where he lived. I know it was in an apartment, but I don't know where. I do know, Danny told me this. He said, don't tell anybody. But part of the reason they don't want anybody to know where we live is because of the way we live. We will have like a 2-bedroom apartment, and there will be at times as many as 10 brothers living there. And we're sleeping on the floor or the couch or wherever we can find a spot, because they don't want to pay for extra living quarters for us. So they will cram a whole bunch of us into an apartment. And they were allowed to do that because the church owned the small apartment complex that they lived in. So, like, there's no landlord that's going to find out and kick the extra people out because the church was the landlord. And apparently they were living in absolute squalor. But see, all these single brothers, one of the requirements to be one of the single brothers is that you had to give all of your money to the church, and then the church would decide how much money you needed to live. They would give you an allowance. And so you lived in the church's apartments, so you didn't have rent. And they would decide if you needed money for like clothes or toiletries, and they would monitor how much money you were spending. And if they felt that you were asking for too much, they would chastise you in front of the other brothers. And I included that in a scene in the story. And I had several brothers, back that up and say that's absolutely true. That was the way we lived. It was a very tightly controlled environment. You were watched everywhere you went. The single brothers, most of them, they worked in places where the other single brothers worked. There were a couple of places in town where a lot of them worked. One was like an eyewear place. I forget what the other one was, but they were encouraged to work where the other brothers worked. That way, other people would keep an eye on you, and you were supposed to keep an eye on other people, and you were supposed to report any inappropriate or suspicious activity with the other brothers. So they were very closely watched. The sisters, it was kind of that way, but it was not, they were not so tightly controlled. I believe one of the reasons the single brothers were so tightly controlled was because, I don't know how much I should say, but maybe I better not. The bishop and founding pastor liked having them close by. I'll just leave it at that. And he liked having their absolute loyalty. And they would have to prove it occasionally. Anyway, I'm not going to say anything else about that. Just read the story. It's in there. He died in prison. And I was very happy to hear it. He was a horrible man. I'm glad he's dead. Okay, so I didn't know where he lived. I was very excited to see him. And when I first got to see him, so I'd been there at least a week, living up in Illinois. I already had a job lined up when I got there. I had been checking around online and making phone calls. I already had an interview lined up for a really good job. They wanted to get a job for me at this place where some of the other sisters worked. The sisters are unmarried. The married sisters kind of mentored the unmarried sisters. So they wanted to get me a job at another place, but it paid way less than this job that I was interviewing for, and I did get. And it's funny because once they found out how much more I was going to be making, knowing I was going to be tithing a whole lot of that to the church, they were suddenly fine with it. the whole tone of the conversation changed as soon as I mentioned my salary. Like, oh, well, we'll make an exception this time. You really should have checked with us before, going for that job, but we'll make an exception. Yeah. Don't forget to tithe now. And if you were single, you were, of course, expected to tithe more because you don't have a family to, support. So, of course, you're expected to give even more. And I tithed quite a bit of money to that church. I really did, because you were expected to. And again, I wanted their approval because I wanted to marry Danny. So I still remember the first time I got to see him. So I'd been there about a week. I had started my new job already. I went for an interview right after I moved up there, and I started like 2 days later. It was awesome. It was great. It was a bummer though. On my new job, there was no dress code. You could literally wear anything you wanted to. It was kind of like a document processing center for company like medical facilities that want to be part of trials for new medications. They wanted to be part of trials, and they have to get FDA approval for that. There's a lot of paperwork. This company handles all the paperwork for the facility, so that's what I was doing. It was actually a really fun job. There was no interaction with the public, and we had no dress code. But I was told by the church, of course, you are expected to wear appropriate clothing at all times. We don't care whether there's a dress code or not. The church has a dress code. You will abide by it, no matter where you are, if you want to be a part of this church. So I still had to wear like heels and hose and dresses and like every day to work. And it was kind of awkward because nobody else, even the supervisors, didn't dress that way. It was like, whose ass is she trying to kiss? Nobody's. I didn't even try to explain it because I knew at the time how it would sound. Like, they're going to think I'm in some kind of cult if I tell them that. So I just said, oh, this is the way I just prefer to dress. And that was a total lie. Hated it. Hated it. But that's the way I dressed the whole time I was there. When I first saw Danny, it was at church. And I still remember I was in the main, like you coming through the double doors, I was in the main hallway. And I saw him. And I went running up to him and I hugged him. And he immediately pushed me away. And he looked up. And I looked like, what? And I looked, there was a camera. He said, you cannot do that here. He said, that is not appropriate. You cannot do that. And he just pushed me like back, like, no. And he just looked like, you can't do that here. Because he whispered it like, you can't do that. No. And it was such a disappointment. Like, but I haven't seen you. And, I haven't seen you since my brother's wedding. We've been talking. We're engaged to be married, I didn't have a ring or anything, but, like, what? So we weren't allowed to sit together for the longest time. I had to sit with the sisters, and of course he sat with the brothers. Even in the hallway, one of my other initial experiences at the church, I came in one Sunday morning. Now, you were expected at every service, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday evening. If there were special meetings at the church, you were expected to be there because, again, you're a single sister or brother, whatever. Like, what else have you got to do? Of course you're going to be here. You were expected to dedicate a lot of time to the church. Pretty much 7 days a week, you were expected to be doing church stuff. So I came in, and there were just little groups, and I didn't notice right away something key about the groups in the hallway. So I came in, and and of course I'm new, and there's like a clump of women over here talking about stuff, and I tried to kind of join, but something was off about it. So I went this other group, and they were talking about something, and like nobody was saying anything to me, and it was just very awkward. So I went on down the little hallway a little bit, and there were some guys down there, and they were talking about fishing. Well, I love fishing. So I automatically like, oh my gosh, I love fishing. I've been fishing since I was a kid. And they all turned and looked at me like I had horns growing out of my head. Like, and they all just kind of closed the circle like, no. And it was the weirdest, like, what did I do? And then one of the single sisters saw me, and she came running up there, and she just kind of grabbed me by the shoulders and just turned me like, come on, and took me back down the hall. She said, and the whole way down, she's just like, look, you can't go down there. You can't do that. The sisters stay down here. The brothers go up there. You cannot go up there. Like, I'm sorry. You can't go up there. You can't talk to them. You're supposed to stay down here with the sisters. I'm sorry. Did no one tell you that? Like, no? No. So then I had to introduce myself to everyone, and I was so embarrassed. There were so many times like that in the church where I was just so embarrassed because there was something that I didn't know. Well, you don't know what you don't know. And I was always breaking these rules that I didn't know were rules, and I was constantly apologizing. And I felt like such a failure. Like, I can't get this. And that's part of what cults do. They want to break you down. It's a whole system. They break you down to build you back up the way they want you. They have to break you first, and then they remake you. But so I wasn't allowed to sit with Danny. I was not allowed to really speak to him unless I had someone there. I had a couple of people that were like my chaperones, sort of, and we were allowed to go out for lunch or something, like after church, but only if the chaperone was with us. We really weren't allowed to be alone. But it was really nice to see him, but we didn't really get to talk much. So basically, what I'm saying is, by the time we got married, I didn't really know him at all. I didn't know this guy at all. Although some things, I became aware of some things literally like right before my wedding. I mean, maybe a day or two before our wedding that I didn't know. And that is when I found out that everything I had heard about the so-called bishop of this place had done everything I had heard that he had done. And I had been told it was a lie. He didn't do any of that stuff. He's innocent. I found out from a reliable source, no, he did. And so I confronted Danny. There was this one night after church. I said, right after I found this out, I said, we need to talk. And I said, get in the car. Get in my car. Oh, get in the car. So we drove down to the parking lot of a Jewel Osco. It's a grocery store. We parked in the parking lot of a Jewel Osco. And I said, all right, I want to know the truth. I heard from, and I told him who I heard it from. I heard from this person that all that stuff about the bishop was true. Tell me now if it's true. Don't lie to me. I want to know the truth. Is it true? Because you told me it wasn't. I want to know the truth. And he said, yep, it's true. And I reacted kind of like, if you saw the movie Mrs. Doubtfire, when Sally Field finds out that Mrs. Doubtfire is her ex. The way she reacted in that restaurant is about how I reacted. Like, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to say. Everything I had heard for months and months was a lie. Everything. I never wanted to set foot in that church again. I never wanted to set foot in there again. Now, I still basically didn't know Danny, but this kind of took over everything. And this might have been, it wasn't 48 hours before our wedding, and we were having the wedding at the church. I said, I don't want to go in there. I never want to go back in there. That place is evil. And he agreed with me. He said, I know. I'm so sorry I lied. Why did you lie? Because that's just what we have to say. Okay. So, this is not the part that I laugh at. I'm sorry. I went off on a tangent. So, okay. So the wedding is coming. I said, okay. We'll do the wedding in the church. It's already planned. We were doing the reception somewhere else, actually. A really nice place, not at the church. Okay, we'll do the wedding at the church. After that, I don't ever want to go back there. I don't care if I never go there again. And I'm leaving here. I'm not staying here. I can't stay here. Do you want to come with me? Do you want to get out of here? He said, yes, I do. So, long story short, we agreed that after the wedding, we were going to leave. Leave the state completely and come back here. He wanted to come back here with me. So, one thing I did do, and I did this as like my final FU to the church. It was funny then too. Okay, now the church really hates what they call worldly music. John Denver is worldly music. You're not allowed to listen to it. You're only allowed to listen to music produced by the church, which I'm sorry, it's all really awful. No offense to the brothers that made it, but it's not great. I still have a CD of it somewhere. It's really bad. You can listen to that. TV and movies. There was an approved list of books, movies, TV shows that were approved by the bishop that you were allowed to enjoy. Other stuff you were not supposed to be watching or reading or listening to. They kept a pretty tight grip on that. If they found out you were reading an unapproved book or watching an unapproved movie, you would get called into the office. You would be dressed down for that. So I was aware of this, right? So the day of our wedding, I went up to the sound booth guy. I had a CD. I said, "Here, after we get up there, before we say our vows, can you play this song?" "Oh, what is it?" It's approved. The pastor approved it. It's fine. Just this one song on here. Just play it." And I had named it on the CD, "Amazing Grace." It was. It was. It was a Shania Twain song. And what was it? I don't know. It was some love song by Shania Twain. I don't remember. Definitely not approved. Worldly entertainer making a song. They played the whole damn song, and everybody in there was visibly uncomfortable, and I just stood there smiling because I thought they would stop it, honestly. I thought the pastor would. He didn't, though. He just stood there looking really uncomfortable. Everybody was. It tickled me. It was my favorite part of the whole thing. And so we stood there while they played the whole song. I thought they would stop it, but they didn't. And so we got married and we had our reception, and it was great. So we left there. We left. We didn't say anything to the church. We had been living in this cute little place. It was an old house, and I mentioned it in River Road. I called it the little concert hall. It was this really cool house. It was a very old house designed by an architect back in I want to say the late 1700s. Beautiful house. But the rent was really cheap because it needed a lot of work. Originally, we didn't live there until after we were married. I moved into it before we got married, and we were supposed to fix it up and pay rent too. But we ended up we called and let them know we were leaving. We didn't have an official lease or anything on the place, but we moved back down here. We got back down to North Carolina right at the tail end of one of the biggest snowstorms they have ever had in this state. If anybody remembers it, it was in early 2000. The county where my mom lived got they got like 27 inches of snow, and it just paralyzed the place. Like, that is not something we get here. That's like a once in a century kind of snowstorm. So we had to deal with that. We came down with our rider truck. We actually came down. Danny's dad had to come help us because, okay, I bought Danny a car. Danny did not have a car. And Danny and I had quit our jobs. We had no savings, but I had bought Danny a car at an auction because it was all I could afford. Danny had no money. I had very little money because I'd been tithing myself half to death the whole time I was there. You're supposed to basically give all your extra money to the church. So I didn't have any savings, really, when they like it that way, because then you're kind of dependent on the church if you ever need anything. But I bought this. It kind of looked like this right here. It was a Volvo sedan. Now imagine, okay, it's like this car, but purple. It was quite purple. Okay, I will admit it was not the most suave, cool looking car you ever saw, but I got it for $250 at an auction. Now I knew it was going to be a problem because before they even pulled it through where they were doing the auction, it died and they had to push it the rest of the way. But by then I had already gotten the final bid and it was mine. Like, as soon as I made my bid and it sold, the damn car just died. Like, crap. But he needed a car. He didn't have a car. And so see, when you're a single brother, you can always get rides from people. And he didn't need a ride to work because he worked with a bunch of people from the church, and they all just rode together. And if he needed anything from the store, they would all just go to the store together. They kind of did everything together, you know. And again, that's the way they keep an eye on each other all the time. So he didn't have a car. So I bought him this car. Okay. We got it running. I think basically all it needed was like a battery, and it needed some tires and brakes and stuff like that. But you know, it didn't take a lot to make it, roadworthy. So Danny's dad came. I drove my car. We towed the bus. And I was able to drive the bus up there because they don't have like inspections like they do here. That bus would have never passed inspection here, but I got to drive it in Illinois, which was great. I had to let it go later because I couldn't afford all the repairs and the body work that it needed. Unfortunately, I had to let it go. It was a 68 Westphalia camper with a bay window. It was really cute, but it did need quite a bit of body work that I could not afford. Anyway, and so we had the purple Volvo. And Danny drove the Volvo. Danny's dad drove the truck. I drove my little Sentra, and we towed the bus. So we were quite the little parade going down the road from Illinois to North Carolina. This lovely little parade. I will never forget how happy I was to come in North Carolina. And then we went through Greensboro. We were headed to my mom's house because we had nowhere to live. We had nowhere to go. And I told my mom everything about the church and what was happening. Actually, she found out about it while she was there for my wedding. She found out about it too. So she already knew, like, it was just blown wide open what the place was really about. So she said, just come stay with me. Come stay with me. But we got to go through Greensboro. I was so happy to see this place. So we lived with her for several months just to try to, we got jobs in Greensboro. It was quite a long commute, but, we did it for about 4 months to save up money to get a place. But during that time, I learned some things about Danny. I learned that Danny had lied to me about something very important that if I had known, I wouldn't have married him. Okay, Danny told me we were talking before the wedding about stuff like, okay, finances. How much debt do you have? And I told him at that time I still had some student loan debt. I'm still paying off my student loan. My car's paid for. I don't have any other debt. I got a little bit of credit card debt. I was honest with him. Here's how much I have. Student loan, credit card. I was very open about it. He said, oh, I don't really have any debt. I have like maybe $500 worth of credit card debt. That's it. Because in the church, I didn't really have to worry about it. That was a lie. That was a complete lie. And I found out because collection agencies started calling me at work. They find you. If you want to find somebody, yeah, let them owe somebody money. The collection agencies know how to find people. So they started calling me at work. And, oh, hello, Mrs. Danny. Yeah, hi. He actually owes a lot of money. So we're going to need you to start paying on that. You're his wife, right? Yes, I am, but there must be some mistake. He doesn't have any debt. Oh, yes, he does. He had maxed out 3 credit cards and apparently never made a single payment on any of them. And so they had all 3 gone into collections for like $20,000 total. So, that's a big chunk of money. So I asked him about it when I got home after the first call. And the first one, I didn't know about all of it. I only knew about 1 credit card. Oh, that's all I have, I swear. I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you. But then I got calls about the other 2 cards later. I said, how much credit card debt do you have? He said, I just forgot. You didn't forget, you lied. You lied to me. And I was really mad about it. If I had known he had all that debt, I would have told him, you need to straighten out your financial mess before we get married. I'm not going to marry you with all this debt and collections. I didn't have any debt and collections. I mean, I had some credit card debt and I have a student loan. But if you got a whole bunch of debt and collections, if you marry somebody like that, they will come after you too. It will affect you. Because in North Carolina, you have to be separated for a year and a day before you can file for divorce. during that year, they hounded me relentlessly about his debt, and he continued to incur even more debt while we were married and then after we split up, because I kept getting calls about new debt that had gone into collections. Like he bought a car and never made any payments on it. So then they had to repossess it, but they couldn't find him, and he had moved somewhere. Like, I don't know where he lives. Well, we're going to need you to start making payments. Like, you can't get blood from a stone. I have no money. Like, I didn't. I was flat broke. Like, I have no money. And he was making really good money, too. He had a job with some kind of tech firm here at that point. And he was making really good money. The problem was he was blowing all of his money as soon as he got it. And when we were married, after we found a place here to rent, and we were going to split the bills. Like, okay, I'll pay this, you pay this, and then we'll take our extra money and put it towards debt. That was the plan. It never happened. Every time he got paid, he would take his money and just go blow it on, like, he'd go buy a new tech gadget, or he would just go blow it on something really stupid. Like, it was insane, the stupid stuff you can blow your money on. Like, what? So then when it was time to pay bills, he had no money. Like, I'm sorry, I'm tapped out. I got no money. Sorry. And so he only got paid once a month. And so he would get that big fat paycheck and then he'd just go nuts with it. But he figured out pretty quickly, well, if I don't pay it, it's fine because Mary will pay it. She'll complain, but she knows these things have to be paid, so she'll pay it. I almost defaulted on my student loan. We almost got our power cut off several times because I was having to use a credit card to pay because I didn't make enough to cover everything, but he wasn't paying for anything, and it was so stressful. And so we were not together a super long time, and I figured out it's never going to change. He's never going to change. And it's funny because about a year ago, I got a call from a collection agency looking for him. We've been divorced for a very long time. We've been divorced for over 20 years. And I'm going, who is still loaning this man money? His credit score by now has got to be in the single digits. Like, who is loaning him money? Are y'all insane? Don't loan him money. One of the funny things, it wasn't funny at the time. Okay, this was not funny at the time. Two things. One day I got home from work, and this was when I first discovered he was not paying the bills. He didn't tell me he wasn't paying the bills right away. I got home from work before he did one day. Usually he got home before I did and would check the mail. But one day I got home before he did, and I checked the mail, and there was a red envelope and a pink envelope in there. And another pink envelope, or something with red letters on it, oh no. It was my student loan. I had a notice that I was about to default on it. It was a final notice for the power, that our power was about to be cut off. And the other one, I think, was the phone. And these were all things that he was supposed to be paying. I had rent, groceries. I can't remember how we split it up, but I was paying the rent on the place, groceries, stuff like that. And he pulled up right when I was looking at these standing in the driveway. I went nuts. I went absolutely nuts. And all of these things were in my name. Everything was in my name. The place we stayed at, the place where we lived, the power, student loan, obviously. Everything was in my name because he had such terrible credit. And I had to put him on my car insurance because his credit was so low, nobody would give him car insurance. Adding him to my car insurance more than quadrupled my premiums, and he was supposed to cover that, but he never did. That was a whole other thing. I went completely ballistic on him in the driveway. I just lost it. That was one of maybe 2 times in my whole life that I have ever just completely lost it. It was a blur. It was just a blur. I just remember screaming at him in the driveway. I was so mad at him. I didn't tell you because I knew you'd get mad. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. You didn't tell me you weren't paying the bills because you knew I would get mad? Of course I'm going to get mad. Oh my God. So, It wasn't funny then, but it's kind of funny now because I wish I had a video of that because it's probably actually pretty funny to watch. It's not funny though. If somebody is doing this to you, it's not, don't put up with it. Don't. You deserve better. You deserve better than that. Don't let somebody treat you that way. The other thing, this was so random. One day, so he had the purple Volvo. One day, this was on a Saturday, so we were at home, and he said he was going to go out for a while. And I'm like, okay, fine. I was inside watching a movie or whatever. I wasn't really worried about it. And he left. And about an hour later, I get a call from him. Hey, Mary, um, can you come up to Rice Toyota? It's a Toyota dealership here in Greensboro. Can you come up to Rice Toyota and bring the title to your car? I said, what? Yeah, can you do that? Do you have time to do that? Can you bring it up here real quick? Why do you need the title to my car? Oh, I'm gonna sell it because they're gonna give me $1,400 for it, and I'm gonna use it as a down payment on a new car. They're gonna approve me for a loan. I mean, my credit's not great, but they said they could approve me for a loan. It probably had like 500% interest on it or whatever. And they're gonna give me $1,400 for your car, and I can use that as my down payment. So if you could do that. And I looked out the window, and the purple Volvo was there. My car was gone. My car that I bought and paid for is gone. So I'm on the phone like, you took my car to Rice Toyota? Yeah, I wanted to see what they give me for it. And they're going to give me $1,400. I said, that's not a good deal. That's terrible. Why would you take, well, they didn't want the Volvo. Apparently he had taken the Volvo up there, which was also in my name. I also had the title for that because it was my car. Oh, they didn't want the Volvo, but they said they give me $1,400 for your car. So if you bring your title up here, I said, what am I supposed to drive? Oh, you can drive the Volvo. I said, what's wrong with the Volvo? It's embarrassing. I can't drive that car anymore. I can't stand it. One of the things, he had taken up golf after we moved to North Carolina. He had started playing golf, and that was where a lot of his money went. He bought some really nice clubs, and if you've ever gotten into golf, it's very expensive. It can be very expensive, all the stuff you can buy. And he was going to play golf. I don't know where he was going. He might have been going to Grandover. I don't know. Sort of a nicer place. He said, it's embarrassing. When I go to play golf, I don't want anybody to see my car. I have to park way off, and they're all staring at it. It's embarrassing. I'm sitting at a stoplight and people are just staring at my car. It's humiliating. I cannot drive that car one more day. So I said, so you want me to drive the car that you say is embarrassing, so you can sell my car for a fraction of what it's worth to buy you said a new car? Yeah, I'm gonna get a new car. What are you getting? He was gonna get like what was a RAV4 or something? I don't know. It's something ridiculous. So you're telling me you want me to drive the car that you say is too embarrassing for you, that I bought for you because you had no car, and you're gonna sell my car for a fraction of what it's worth so you can buy a new car to drive? A car that you can't afford because you can't even pay the bills that you're supposed to pay. Oh, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. You see, for the first 90 days, I don't even have to make a payment. So, I said, do you not see the problem? You want me to drive the old car? He said, well, you're used to driving old cars. It's not embarrassing for you. Why would you have a problem driving it? I wanted to punch him through the phone. I said, okay, Danny, tell the salesman thank you, but no thank you. Bring my car back here. Don't ever touch it again. He was furious. He was so furious. He said, are you kidding me? I have been here talking to this guy for an hour. I had this all worked out. I have been working with him now for a week on this. I talked to him about the Volvo, but he said if I could bring in your car, he could give me more money. Are you seriously doing this? Do you have any idea how embarrassing it's going to be to tell him now that now I can't do it? after all this trouble? I said, yeah, I guess that's what you're going to have to do then, because that's not your car to sell. That's my car. And you're never going to touch it again. Get my car back here. Nice and safe. Get my car back here. And he took forever coming home, and he was so mad when he got home. He pouted. He had like an adult temper tantrum. He said, all the way home, I kept thinking, I'm just going to drive this car into a wall. I'm going to drive it into a building. I don't even want to live anymore. This is awful. I can't believe you what you are. You're so awful. You're so mean. Why are you so cruel? And I just busted out laughing. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe this was the person that I had chosen to marry. I could not. And that just made him even more angry because I was laughing. I couldn't stop myself from laughing at him like, oh my God. Oh my God. And I was laughing too because I was kind of laughing at myself like, I have really screwed up. What have I done? I have married a nightmare. Oh my God. So I knew it was over. That was the moment when he got back home with my car. I knew it was over. Like this is, I'm done. I'm done. I'm so done. So I told him he needed to get out. And he did. He actually went. The only problem was he moved out while I was at work. And he left the house wide open. He left the front and back door wide open. And I don't know if he did it, but somebody went through and ransacked the house and trashed the place. I think he trashed the place, but I can't prove it. The thing that really bugged me the most, though, was that somebody took my high school class ring. That really irked me. I had saved up working. I worked in a little grocery store. I saved up to buy that ring, and it was $240. And I was making $3.20 an hour. It took a long time to save that money up. And it was stolen. Somebody went through my stuff and they stole it. I went around to all the pawn shops for weeks trying to find that ring. I never found it. That bugs me more than anything, that I lost my class ring. All the other stuff, I didn't really have anything else worth taking, but yeah, and he was just such a nightmare. He was just so awful. I had no idea. He had no concept of money management, budgeting, anything like that. Yeah, and apparently he didn't learn, because up until a year ago, collection agencies were still looking for him. So, yeah, that's my story about my first husband. The marriage was short, and I was very happy when it was over. But again, like I say, in North Carolina, you have to be separated for a year and a day before you can get divorced. Be very careful who you marry. And even if you think you know somebody, you may not. There may be things you don't know. I mean, you may find out things. You may be surprised after you get married. I had to pay for the divorce and everything, and so I had to finance all that. But he didn't show up. He didn't contest it, so that was good. But I was very happy to divorce that man and to shed that part of my life. I don't know that getting him out of the church was good for him. Actually, in retrospect, I almost wonder if he would have been better off staying there, because at least there he was still able to rack up a lot of debt, even in the church, which was pretty impressive. But see, even back then there was, internet online ordering, and I think that's how he was doing it. And I did notice, the few times I saw him, he always had the most modern, up-to-date tech stuff. Like, he had expensive stuff. Oh, they gave it to me at work. Like, yeah, maybe not. Maybe your employer didn't give you all that stuff, and that may be what a lot of his debt was. But so going through all that was awful. It was a nightmare, but I learned a lot, and I got much better about budgeting because I had to. I mean, I did the best I could before that, but I tried to do better. And I learned a lot about, wants and needs and saving money and paying your debt. And yeah. So I learned a lot from it. I don't think he learned anything from it. Probably not. But that is the story of my first husband, Danny. and I'm glad he's gone. I don't hate anyone. I don't hate him. It's like the saying, I want him to eat, just not at my table. I want you to go on and live a full life. Just go do it somewhere else. Go do it far away. So I think he actually went back to Illinois because that's where his parents live too. Um, I don't think he went back to the church or anything. I think he just went back and like lived with his parents or something. I don't know. But I'm not really worried about it because he's not my problem anymore. I'm very happily divorced. So that is it. That is my story of my first husband. And I can laugh about it now because it's over and I will never make that mistake again. I would be happy never getting married again. That would be fine. I'm in no hurry to get married ever again. I like not being married. It's nice. I'm responsible for my own stuff and that's it. And that's good enough for me. But thank you so much for watching my little talk. It's so great to have you here. All of y'all, whether you're new, whether you've been here for years, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you again soon.